Right, welcome. If you don't know who I am, then you can't be a member. I'm Sharon Constanson, Chairman of your chamber, and here to entertain you and to get us through the evening as fast and as efficiently as we can. Most important part, once we're through the formalities, is to hear from our four speakers, which is to understand what is actually happening on the ground in South Africa in practical terms of some of the issues in question. So AGM is a formal process every year, but we do take it as an opportunity just to do some marketing from the Chamber's perspective and to ensure that people know what we're up to. So it's our message back session as well. First part will be the Chairman's report that we will go through, which is just to give you an update of our strategy, what we're all about, and most importantly is where we're going hereafter and what we've been up to in this last year. So our vision is to be a capable connector for increased bilateral trade and investment between the UK and South Africa, empowering the growth of our members. Our purpose is to uplift the quality of the lives of South Africans. So in anything we do, as long as the ultimate will improve some South Africans' life somewhere down the chain, we are addressing our purpose, which is very, very important to us to make sure that that is an outcome. Our values after a hard-working strategy session, literally almost the day before lockdown, was integrity, collaboration, service to stakeholders and our community, which are the key foundations that as a board and as an executive and as an advisory board is to be aware of those values and to live those values, walk those values, talk those values, to actually be visible to those values and to provide a home from home for South Africans in delivering solutions, a learning environment, a trading environment, an introductory environment to meet other businesses. But actually as a team, we've just had a board meeting and the EXCO reported back to the board. And you could just see the energy of all the people together, the fun they're having, the collaboration, the people they've met, the people they've got to know. And if we can make somebody smile and have some fun, I'm also achieving another very important objective in my life is to actually make sure that we're adding value to the individuals that are part of this chamber as well. So how have we done over this period of time? We've coped with COVID. I think actually in many ways, we've really coped very well with COVID. COVID has given us an opportunity to rethink our way of engaging with our members, a different quality of content that we can bring to our members, a different frequency at which we can integrate with our members, and a different knowledge base that we can share with them. So COVID has been great. The challenge we have now is to migrate into a hybrid environment where not everything will be Zoom, thank goodness. Not everything will be in person because Christ, I'd never live, because if I had to do all of this in person, it would be impossible. And therefore we have a hybrid opportunity. So we can still get people globally coming to join us for a regional event, which is absolutely fantastic. But also that we've got the reach of being able to get lots of different people, but when we're doing something that is networking, that is local, that we can retain it as local and have the nuances of meeting people in person over a physical glass of wine, coming to South Africa, meeting people in regional activities as well. So we had a number of events over the year. We had the virtual awards evening, we had the virtual gala dinner, which really was a laugh where everyone got dressed up in their black ties and we all sat down to dinner together virtually, which was extremely successful. So we were all eating the same food and drinking the same wine, not out of the same plate or glass. We've had a number of webinars. We probably do on average anything up to 3 to 4 events a week. So we have been extremely busy with the chamber and its engagement with its members, ranging everything from personal well-being to the governor of the Reserve Bank and just about anything we can think of in between. We've had regionally led events, we've had centrally led events, we've had focus level events, we've had, so whether you want to slice it regionally or vertically, we've had events from different ones. And as of last week, we launched in the Professional Women's Forum, the first hybrid event that we'd run, where we had 60 odd people in at KPMG in Guernsey, and we had 70 odd people online globally. Worked extremely successfully. goes to show that you can use the existing technology to run something of that nature. We do a lot of third-party events, those with the Council of Foreign Chambers, but we also go beyond that, and we've got third-party events of content-rich as well as people-rich, and cross-pollinate ideas between chambers that have the same challenges as ourselves as well. And then we have member events where a member is running something, and we, because it's of mutual interest, we share it with the greater group. The chapters I've spoken about. So the achievements of what we have done, we've got a very active social media environment, particularly on LinkedIn, but in certain areas very much so on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well. I've spoken about all the other things. The area that we have focused on during this year is to bring to the Platinum members very specific focus as to what is their remit, what do they want to achieve, who do they want to reach, and how are we going to do it and deliver on that. So our engagement with our Platinum members has been very, very rewarding over this last period, as well as with our strategic partner. Last year, we decided ethically it was not a good thing to push for membership, to push for new monies to be paid in difficult times. So we went for relevance. This year, we're back to membership, and we're looking at a membership drive, which we'd done the year before. We'd more than doubled our membership the year before that. So would I like to say we're setting at doubling our membership again? Absolutely, in numbers. If we can do it in value, absolutely, we'll do it in value. We're going to aim to double one of those numbers and work really hard on the membership delivery, expectations, and therefore the financial stability for the chamber as well. So the individual, if you look at our membership numbers, I'll be getting to membership later. We've actually done reasonably well on membership, but we've been challenged on event income, as you can imagine. Everything we know these days is allowed to go online and for free, which obviously challenges us in every way. As the board got to witness, we have a very engaged executive. We've got over 20 members in our executive, and we have over 20 in our advisory board, as well as the board team itself. So you're looking at 50 odd people that are involved in a pro bono basis in making this chamber what it is today. I'm not going to steal the thunder from our chair of the finance committee, who will give you some feedback on our finances. Governance has taken a step up during this period of so-called quietness, where we've addressed many of the governance issues internally. And what we've allowed is the board to become a more strategic non-executive body. We have mentioned that before, but that has been the outcome of what we've achieved over the 3 odd years that I have been the chairman of the board. We didn't have an executive back in the old days. The board was it, as well as being the board. Our objective, we want to provide advice, introductions, solutions, services, know-how, contacts, introduction, networks. All of those are related to South African businesses wanting to trade internationally, South African businesses that want to locate in the UK, UK businesses wanting to trade, find customers, send product to, or locate in South Africa or Africa, using South Africa as a springboard. And South Africans in the UK, the individuals in the UK, as an individual or as a business or as a charity or in whatever format that they are here in the UK, how can we give them the answers to some of their problems? Many of those answers will be delivered by our members, and some of those will be delivered by the chamber itself. So nothing comes without the challenges that come with it. The challenges being membership growth during a period of the pandemic. We have survived the pandemic. I wouldn't say it's glorious, but we did survive it. We survived it well, but with a passion and an energy even greater than we had at the beginning of the pandemic. The events I have spoken about, I'm not going to repeat itself. If I look at our executive leadership, the leadership of the board of the organization, the board members that we have got, myself as chair, I'm not chair of any of the committees. We've got Dennis Seatsman, who works hard, being both the chair of the governance committee and the finance committee. And then we've got Chris van Niekerk, and Dennis is deputy chairman. Chris van Niekerk, senior independent director, who is our chair of the membership committee. Unfortunately, Chris is leaving us as at the end of this meeting. He is retiring due to personal demands on his time and having to study. The man's gone back to university, and also to deal with some very pressing personal issues over the next year. But Chris will be stepping up to the advisory board, and will be continuing to support the Chamber as a member and with certain projects once his time commitment is released a little bit more than it is at the moment. So Chris, if we could just have a wave from you. There we go, somewhere in the middle of your screen. The rest of the board is made up of Peter Attard-Montalto, who will be having a conversation with you later as one of the speakers. John Battersby, who goes back to founding days on the board. He's our longest serving director at the moment, and is head of our PR and is chairman of the Strategic Communications Committee. Sarah Hutton, one of the members that joined at the same time as Chris and Dennis and Peter, who is involved in the mentoring, HR, and the support in that area of the business. So Mike Miller, you will know of Mike. Mike is one of the founding members as well, and I did see you around a moment ago, Mike. There you are in the middle of my screen. Mike was the longest serving, but due to good governance has now moved from the board to the executive. But what we have done after the efforts he's been putting in is he has joined the advisory board in addition. So he is our only person that is on both advisory board and EXCO. Chris, as I said a moment ago, he's moving to the advisory board as at the end of this meeting. And Chris, welcome to the advisory board. You'll be getting to meet your compatriots who you've met a couple of times at advisory board meetings. And Leon Ayer, who was on the board as well at the same time as the other group joined, due to work commitments and the pressures of his own company and the British Chamber of Business. Leon stepped down from the board on the 9th of December this year. We have got 2 new board directors. Can I just see a wave from the 2 board directors in question? There's one there, and I can't see Moses. I saw him a moment ago, but we've got Moses as well. So we have got 2 new board directors that joined us as of today. Leslie, who is UK, Scotland based, who has a specialist in strategic planning, global strategic consultant. He's worked with the Oppenheimer and the Anglo-American family, Oppenheimer, and there was another family you mentioned a moment ago, but I'm not going to try and remember it now, involved with British American tobacco background. And he engages very much in scenario planning, strategic planning, and supporting organizations to take that step up into a new place. So we really welcome Leslie joining us. I think he's going to give us a lot of blue skies thinking that we often spend so much time getting things done that it'll be nice to have a different perspective. And then we have Moses Tempe, who's based in Durban, who has deep experience in the membership environment, coming from the Durban Chamber of Commerce, and has very strong links with government as well. So a very powerful person to add to the main strategic focus of the next year or so, which is membership growth. So we welcome both our new directors who have brought the skill sets we're looking for. We do have 1 or 2 board positions still open there. Moses, I do see you now visible. So if you want to just give a wave quickly, there we go. He's sitting at his desk, very busy. What we are looking for in terms of new members to the board is people who have got UK corporate networks that will understand the value of joining a chamber of our nature, who are looking to do business in South Africa. So we're looking more now for UK business connections rather than South Africa. So it's a completely different remit. If we get more of some of the stuff we've got, we will consider it, but we need to create the cross-section balance that we need to. Looking at the executive committee, we've got 14 people that retained their position from the EXCO from last year to this year. We added 6 more people to the EXCO during the year, and we lost 7 during the year. So we've got a strong contingent of the 20 odd people on our board, on our EXCO, who are busy actively working on a project, an event, a theme, a committee, or connections or stakeholders. They across the board, we have that kind of engagement. I'm not going to go through them all, but many of them are present here at the moment. We have an advisory board of about 26 odd people. This has been quite stable during the year. Nigel Casey, who is was High Commissioner from the UK to South Africa. He, due to his position, will be replaced We are talking to Mr. whether he has an interest in staying with us, but seeing as Pakistan is now his focus, he probably won't. And then we've got Diana Hudimark from Nedbank, who has taken over from Kevin Ryder, who has stepped down when he left as CEO of Nedbank here in the UK. But otherwise, other than the 2 additions I've just mentioned, that is where we are on the advisory board. Paying people versus people who are not paying for their membership. People who don't pay are executive committee, the board, and the advisory board. Otherwise, we have a couple of affiliate members who work on a reciprocity basis, but there's a very few and far between. So as you can see, we've got quite a high number of physical people that are engaged in the board, in the chamber, making things happen. We have 69 paying members. The largest group in terms of numbers are the professional and individuals in terms of numbers, which you would expect. The next group that we have got is the entrepreneur, NGO, charity, the next category up in terms of price. And then we've got retirees, students, regional, similar kind of number. So these are the people that make up our chamber, make up the character of our chamber. And then we move into the unprofessional, strategic partner, platinum, gold, corporate, and the SME. So we've got a number of categories where people can find their niche, as well as the chapters. They can come in through the chapters as well, which is a slightly different business model, and one that we are evolving at the moment. But if you take that 69 and you transfer that into money, you can see our platinum members, however much they might be 6 in number, bring in more than 50% of the income. So these are the people that we are focusing on for the big financial growth rather than the numbers growth. And this is the category that we feel we can deliver the high amount of value to, and who can then gain very directly from the relationship. Second largest is our strategic partner. We only have 1 strategic member. Andrew will be joining us shortly. He is speaking, but unfortunately he is having to only join us a little bit late. And that gives you an idea where our individual members then come in at the next category. So their high number does bring value to the chamber. And also when it comes to attending meetings or events, that's where we have our numbers coming from, is that group. So as I mentioned, we were focusing on the relevance to our members. I've talked about all the things that we are doing. Our youth group needs re-energizing, and we're looking at some other professional services, special interest groups that we're going to be looking at. But at the moment, our regional chapters are focused on a couple of regions within the UK. East of England is present with us today. And we've also, I think present with us at the moment is also Ireland. We've started a chapter. Yes, John's with us. We've got an Ireland chapter, and we've got 3 people at least who are from Guernsey. We've got a Guernsey chapter. We've got people here attending from the Isle of Man, because we have an Isle of Man chapter. And then we've got the professional women chapter who are here as well. And then we're going to be focusing on things like ESG, technology, diversity and inclusion. There are various interest groups that will be growing. We found the youth group, the energy to diversify their time from work was quite a challenge, and therefore energizing that group to spend time planning, developing, and committing to projects was quite challenging. So we'll have a look, we'll refocus on the youth at a point in time. What we are doing is we're focusing on Youth Day in South Africa, which is coming up very quickly in June. And we've got an event that is focusing on education, children, and the value that education brings to children, and how that is changing their lives. And we'll be hearing from the youth themselves and their teachers and their headmaster and the foundation behind them. Hopefully we're going to be talking to 3 different foundations or charities that will be supporting the youth specifically. So we'll hear from them in 2-3 weeks' time. This is what the chamber looks like if you map it out, starting with the board, the advisory board, and the executive committee. And then we've got the various board committees that have been evolved and formed and are focusing on specifically getting things done. We have the different focus areas in green of the activities of the chamber. and that is supported by our regional chapters, which are supporting people, networking, business, trade, investment. And then we have within the management committee different focus areas of what people are doing within the management committee functions. Which takes me to, I think, ultimately the end of where I'm going to be talking before I hand over. And I know South Africans speak fast, and I'm doing it on purpose. I do apologize. What we're doing looking forward is hybrid and live events that we've talked about. The ESG agenda is going to be very important for the Chamber. We're picking that up in a couple of streams. We've got events running up and potentially some involvement in physical, if we can, in the COP26 environment. And we'll be hearing from one of our speakers this afternoon. Andrew, thank you for joining us. You are with us on COP27 as well. The diversity and inclusion agenda is important to everybody. It's something that gratefully COVID's brought us a few things that have been of benefit. The green agenda, the well-being of our people, and the mindful diversity and inclusion of all people in the communities we are working in, so that we actively are inclusive in our behavior as a board, as an organization, and as a sort of a greater membership in the way we think. And so there'll be a number of topics around that to help others understand the importance of this agenda. Regional and chapter growth we've spoken about. We'll be working on that. We'll be focusing on all the key South African events between now and Christmas. We will be doing something specific from here with panels, speakers, events, activities, and hopefully some of those will go hybrid. The one that's not going hybrid is our awards evening. That one will stay online. We think it's too high risk to plan into a hybrid environment just yet. We'll go for that next year. Strategic and Platinum member is building those value propositions further, working with a potential bank to be joining us. So fingers crossed at some point in time we'll get there. Making sure that we also have good affiliations of value. I'm speaking to a number of regional chambers within South Africa, regional bodies and associations within South Africa and the UK to help them. For example, we're working with Make UK, who said to us the other day, we didn't even know South Africa existed as a possible trading partner. We said, really? So we've got quite a bit of work to do. We're working with Make UK directly in terms of promoting their activities into South Africa. We are looking in, one of the focus areas we'd like to work on is a patron for the Chamber. Certain things we need to achieve, we want to look at doing faster than potentially membership growth might allow us to. So we are actively working into that space of seeing whether there is a patron or a number of patrons who would like to come together and support the Chamber taking a big step up in terms of certain executive activities that need to be done to really make the Chamber fly and be more sustainable beyond the pro bono team you have just come across today. So that is where we're focused. And the other thing that we're doing is at least one charitable activity event a year. We focus on working with a charity that is already a member and doing something really special for them and bringing our membership into the knowledge of what they're doing, into the contribution to what they're doing, and actually giving them a boost, or them or a number of them a little bit of a boost. Dennis, as Chair of the Finance Committee and of the Governance Committee, could I ask you to take over from here?
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, I'd like to start off presenting the results for the year ended December 2020. So as with most organizations, companies, economies in 2020, we also felt the effect of COVID. And you'll notice that our turnover has decreased. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Suffice it to say that that's not affected by membership figures, which is a good sign. Our cost of sales to turnover remained in the same ratio, and our gross profit is 67%, which didn't change. So that's a good sign as well. If we get on to the next slide, that has a breakdown of the revenue allocation. And as I said, the membership income hasn't really, in fact, it's increased. So if you have a look over the 3 years It's increased to 64,000 in 2020. So that hasn't been impacted by COVID. But what has been heavily impacted is the sponsorship and event income. If we move on to the balance sheet, which is the next slide, I think there's two important things to note. The one is that we had nearly £20,000 cash in the bank. So there are no resolutions, either ordinary or special, that need to be passed at today's meeting. And then if there's any other business, and we open the floor to members for questions.
Chair, may I ask a question? I tried to raise my hand.
Oh, sorry, Kuseni.
Obviously, didn't notice me. Yeah, firstly, just to congratulate you and the team for a job well done in terms of adapting speedily and continuing the affairs of the chamber in the midst of COVID. You noted at the beginning of your presentation that one of the major highlights was surviving COVID itself. The question that I have is, given the experience of going through COVID, and the optimist in me says that once we roll out the vaccine programs around the world, we should be hopeful for a state of normalcy. Then the question I have, what kind of changes that have happened as a result of COVID do you see staying in the post-COVID world, and what kind of things do you see just disappearing?
I think what we have gained, and I've seen it in a lot of the boards I work with in my day job, is we've actually found a new way to engage more frequently, but less demandingly on our time. So we get together in more cohesive numbers, more frequently, and we engage in a more productive manner as a board, but equally as an executive. The ability to pull together people for a half-hour meeting didn't happen before. You would have the odd telephone call here and there, but it wasn't as brought together as a team. So I think the team has benefited hugely from the COVID environment. We've been able to work together as a team. I think what we miss is the now and then to actually see the color of each other's eyes, to actually ask, how are you, to have that social conversation. So what am I going to recommend that we're doing, and as part of the strategy that you did see as well, is that we do the combination of the meeting in person, but equally using the efficiency of a Zoom environment to have a lot of our committee meetings, some of our ExCo meetings, some of our smaller group meetings. But I cannot underestimate the need for us as a team to get together and say, how are you? And to give each other a hug, or share a glass of wine, or have a cup of coffee together, or see the light in somebody's eyes and the smile.
Thank you very much.
Right, we are spot on time. I'm just going to give the formal close to the proceedings from a formality point of view. I'm now going to take the opportunity to move over to our speakers. We will be available for further questions from the board and everyone else who's attending, as well as the speakers being open for questions. So if I could start with Nick Bernadel, a man I've known for a long time, probably longer than most of you in the room. He was one of my profs when I was at Wits University. So we've been around. Nick, can I hand over to you, please?
Thanks very much, Sean. And hi, everybody. Good to be with you. It has been a really interesting year or so as we look back now. And I'm beginning to get the sense that we're heading into, in South Africa, an era of accelerating reform. And I'm getting increasingly confident that this administration is slowly, too slowly for many, getting on top of the politics and the reform of the state and the partnering with business. So maybe we've just got used to a sort of a general level of concern, and we've stabilized, as we did in the 80s, where as things deteriorated, we kept stabilizing at a lower level, because there are many, many very big problems on the go. But at the surface level, at the feeling, at the things coming together level, I would want to inject a tone of optimism about where we are right now. So let me start with that. Of course, the long list of nasties has not gone away. Not enough prosecution on corruption, We've got a huge amount of violence in our society, especially on gender, tremendous poverty. The pockets of poverty have been exacerbated by COVID. This increasing inequality that really is becoming really immoral apart from a practical problem. And then inefficiency in the country as a whole, the dots don't connect enough and we don't get things done. And we move too slowly and we haven't lifted the youth and we haven't brought the 25 million people who depend on a grant more into the economy. All of those things aside, I'm just have a feel that business is working with government. The president is mastering the game. He seems to have turned the corner in the NEC and won the knife fights and managed to get ascendancy. And we'll see how that unfolds in the next short period. And so really what I want to say is a tone of optimism at the moment. Maybe it's just the new normal, but I think there's going to be a bounce back and I think things are stable. We're not falling off the bus. There are some big dilemmas that we all face every day, wherever we are, but particularly here, between being careful and getting things right or being, let's call it progressive and trying to satisfy certain stakeholders and sectors. And I think this administration represents the center. It's solidly in the center. It's working with business. It appeals to the middle class. I think there's something powerful going on in that trade-off. I think the elections that are coming up are going to be interesting. I think the opposition is very weak and stuck. And I can see, I think the ANC really doing fairly well, although a lot of apathy and a lot of no-shows in the local government elections. But we're a democratic society and the judiciary's had its say and the media drives us all nuts. But all of these things are just continuing to roll along and I'm more optimistic. And one of the last things I want to say is about civil society. It's been interesting to see our foundations, religious groups, civil society, NGOs have all come together and made a major alignment, an alliance. And I think that's a very constructive thing. I think at the end of the day, we've got to say South Africa has proven again to be a constitutional democracy with democratic processes as incomplete as they are. And we shouldn't, go over the top trying to compare South Africa to other countries. We should compare South Africa to similar countries. Indonesia, Malaysia, Mexico, these are our comparatives. So I'm wanting to inject an optimistic tone tonight. And so I think some of the ship is turning and this president's going to get a better and better mandate to execute. Let me stop there.
Thanks, Nick. It's so lovely to hear that certain steps that we were getting seriously worried about appear to being addressed by the bigger body that is governing the country. So it's nice to hear what you're saying about Cyril Ramaphosa and his team. The person who knows Cyril Ramaphosa extremely well is Peter Attard-Montalto, one of our board directors. So Peter, who knows the man well, would you like to share your insights with us?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much, Sharon. Normally Nick and I go the other way around. So normally I'm slightly more doom and gloom and then Nick comes in with the positive. But I agree with Nick, there is definitely a sense of stabilization. The question we have to really ask is where we've stabilized and where we're going from there. And is that fundamentally sufficient? So there's been a lot of change in the power dynamics around reform, certainly. The creation of so-called Operation Binedell, this joint venture between the Treasury and the presidency, is starting to deliver real reform and real change where they have a slipstream of political acceptance, political backing, and they are making definite inroads, for instance, in things like reform of water or of transport, where they have the backing of an individual minister. They're able to have a department say that admits they have capacity problems, they're able to deploy capacity into those departments and start to affect change. So a lot of exciting things they're getting up to on things like a water regulator, a water investment agency that is setting up by 2023. The problem is where they face the blockages still, and the most obvious one is still energy. And the the amount of sort of outrage, almost is the right word, around the energy crisis is starting to build again, and the blockages that are seen from Minister Gwede Mantashe and his role in not liberalizing the energy sector fast enough. A lot in the press on that this week. That's an example of where Operation Binedell has been stuck. They have not yet been able to get the president to deploy political capital to overrule the minister. And hence we're facing a very serious and prolonged period of load shedding from September of this year, probably well into the middle of 2022, which won't really be alleviated until new energy starts to come on grid from 2023 onwards. And I think this is the fundamental problem with this sort of go slow, solve the politics first, is it has real world consequences, particularly on something like energy, where you're sitting in the middle of an energy crisis. The other issue, though, to raise is the very big step up in inequality that has happened through the COVID crisis. On the surface, headline data for South Africa has been okay last year, considering the size of the COVID shock that hit it. This is mainly due to the rich saving, having access to credit, etc. And beneath it, there is a massive widening of inequality, a massive step up in things like child food poverty, which are deeply concerning and will have real political and therefore ultimately policy consequences. Demands for a basic income grant, things like this, which are very necessary and South Africa should have, but are fundamentally unaffordable in this fiscal environment, is going to keep the politics very complicated, I think, and why there's no time to lose on many of these reforms, as ultimately to afford something like a basic income grant would cost about 120 billion rand per year. The only way ultimately of affording these things is not through tax, not through printing money, but through higher potential growth. So we ultimately need to have faster growth for a better social security net in South Africa. And I think that's a very worthy aim for thinking about the bedrock of reforms. But we should also be mindful of some negative reforms that are coming through, some increasing concerns about the interventions in business from things like workers on boards, a discussion coming up on that, things like localization, these sorts of issues where there's a lot of uncertainty over the increasing codification potentially of a lot of regulatory issues and regulatory agenda that DTIC are pushing, a lot of debate going on that on this year. So a lot going on in South Africa. Reform is happening. Is it going fast enough to raise long-term potential growth above sort of 2% odd? That's really the question. I remain skeptical on that front, but that's what we need ultimately to make things like a better social safety net in South Africa ultimately affordable. And that's also ultimately the environment that will be more conducive for FDI investors, for chamber members doing business in South Africa. Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Peter. That was very, very insightful. I'd like at this point to please turn to Andrew Skipper, who is our Africa specialist within our advisory board team.
I was going to say that I'm going to be horribly optimistic, which is, and I'm going to challenge Kuseni to be more optimistic than me, because I know he's coming next, and there is nobody more optimistic than Kuseni in the whole world who I've ever met. So I was going to talk a bit about the sort of things I've been hearing. This is a personal reflection on the sort of things I've been hearing in my discussions. I had if anybody wants to know what's going on in South Africa, listen to my podcast with Jacko Marie, which was out, and I think was even rather amusingly, for those who know me, rather amusingly in the Daily Maverick recently. So that was quite fun. But I'll move on quickly from that. I mean, I've been talking to people in, can you hear me, Sharon?
We can.
Okay, good.
Good.
So I've been talking to a range of people from last week, Leonel Zinzu, who people will know as both the chairman of Southbridge, but also the former president in West Africa, to Emma Wade-Smith, who I'm the co-chair of the African Investors Groups with, even speaking to Opal Tometi, who won't be known to all of you, but is the founder of the Black Lives Matter movement in America. So there's a whole load of reasons to be miserable, I'm sure, but I wanted to give you a number. I'm going to give you 10, and I will be very, very brief on these. Firstly, the UK, because this is the UK Chamber. Integrated review, I was really beaten up about the integrated review. I have to say, I don't know if Andrew Salou's still on, but I was beaten up at Chatham House the other day, and I was the only person trying to stick up for the UK, given that Africa hardly gets a mention, and having just reduced our overseas development aid massively. But on the other hand, the practical situation is the Africa Investors Group, which I'm co-chair of, and Chantel is on, is doing good stuff. Emma Wade-Smith's increased her DIT team by 50%. They'll be doing a ton of work across the continent, and they'll be in South Africa. The Ministry of Justice is doing stuff, particularly in terms of a virtual trade mission to South Africa, which I participated in. CDC are still putting a ton of money in, and the export finance team, which has appointed somebody in South Africa recently, have a load of money to support people. Looking at the world generally, Biden administration, the changes there could be very significant. DFC have 60 billion, I believe. They've doubled the money, a lot of which will go to Africa. They are much more flexible in what they can do. I listened to their West Africa person last week. Very, very positive there. And if you look where there were in Paris, there were 40 presidents, I believe, 40 heads of state in Paris last week talking about what could be done there. Everybody's talking about sovereign debt being a complete disaster. Well, it could well be a complete disaster. On the other hand, last week, I believe in June, the IMF looks likely to approve $650 billion of special drawing rights, and the African level share of that will be about 1.5% of GDP on the whole continent. So although and there's a lot of engagement about that from governments, through IMF, through the DIET, for the multilaterals. So that could be reasonable. Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, skepticism about how that's going to work maybe, but could be absolute game changer. Lots of stuff going on in Ghana. For the motor industry taking advantage of that, Ford, I know, put 10 billion into South Africa and are looking to do more. So I think that's good. Diversity, total disaster in a whole load of ways, the pandemic. I think if you look at venture capital, 2% of venture capital money goes into women-led organizations. On the other hand, Standard Bank, as Jacko knows, and others, the African Union, have just come up with a new fund directly aimed at women in the finance industry. I'll get there in the end, Sharon. Shout when I've got to finish, but this list goes on. Art and culture, really important art and culture across Africa at the moment, not least because with restitution binding the art to society and actually making a big difference culturally. Black Lives Matter movement, Opal Tometi is very keen to see African art and engage in African art, which is really important for cultural activities. I would say that being on the board of the Smithsonian, but it's true. Education directly leads to growth in GDP. A lot of very interesting things going on in there. Women and girls in education, for example, is one of Boris Johnson's. I think is about the only area which isn't actually going to be reduced under the new proposals. So that's good. Everybody's talking about tech, clean tech, green tech, edutech, med tech. Lionel Zinzu, when he said at the beginning, something is new in Africa in a very positive way, he was saying that people are telling him that Africa could be 15 years ahead of the rest of the world in terms of clean tech. On the world stage, you've looked at the UK rich list last week, had Strive, Masewewa on it for the first time. And finally, the environment. There's a big risk, obviously, that Africa gets left behind and is treated unfairly. On the other hand, lots of people are looking at that at the moment. And COP27 is in Africa, probably I hear in Egypt, but it is in Africa, and it's an opportunity to engage with the just transition. And so that was my 10 reasons. I'll shut up now. I'm optimistic, but we got to engage. You guys have got to engage. South Africa can't talk about Africa being somewhere else. You've got to engage in Africa. I totally get, Dava, but there's still a tendency, I hate to say it, amongst some South Africans, and absolutely not my good friend who's following me speaking, but there is still a tendency to say, well, when we go into Africa, things we'll do it. You are Africans. It's got to be done. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is there to help you. Kuseni, over to you. Be more optimistic than that.
Kuseni, welcome. Well, first of all, thank you,
And if I
Andrew.
can
I
make
really appreciate what you have shared with there and the challenge you set to see if we can get more and more and more positive. So my friend Kuseni, who I've known for many, many years now as well, who is very involved on the ground of getting things done, getting food there, getting pharmaceuticals, vaccines, and everything around the continent and the world. Kuseni, looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Andrew. I particularly like the note on which you ended your contribution on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, because today is Africa Day, and I think it's very apt that we're having this AGM on Africa Day and discussing South Africa and Africa. And I'm an Africa optimist, and I really think that the AfCFTA is an opportunity to reset not just trade and investment relations, but industrial policy across Africa, and creating manufacturing industries that are resilient. But just in the interest of time, on the FMCG side, we're seeing some green shoots in our retail business, but in reality, it's really a tale of two consumers. The upper LSM consumers and the lower and middle LSM consumers. As Massmart, we're exposed to all the LSMs from the LSM 1 up to 10, so we've got visibility in terms of consumer spending patterns. What we're seeing on the upper LSM level is that there's more consumer confidence, more consumer spend, whereas in the lower to middle LSM level, we're seeing consumers being under pressure, their purses are very much constrained, and they're looking for bargains and they're spending less, and maybe that's the impact of increasing unemployment and also salaries being reduced in some instances. So that's the reality that we are dealing with. On the B2B side, our business, especially macro and our wholesale businesses, are very much exposed to the hospitality and tourism sector, where restaurants and B&Bs buy from our shops. We're seeing quite a lot of challenge there, given the fact that tourism is still limited due to the lack of travel, especially overseas travel, and hotels and other hospitality players being under pressure. So there's still a lot of challenge there. But on the more optimistic side, on the DIY side and home improvement, we own a banner called Builders Warehouse. We're seeing quite a lot of positive consumer sentiment there. People are renovating their houses and probably building more convenient spaces to work from home, which is auguring well for our business. I mean, our Builders Warehouse business delivered record financial performance last year in 2020 during COVID, notwithstanding that for the whole of April, we could not trade because that was still the stricter level of lockdown. But as and when things started opening up, we managed to recover and regain ground and actually deliver record financial performance. On the pharmaceutical side, we're seeing excellent private-public partnerships. It's really great to see the private sector and government in South Africa collaborating and cooperating in the manner in which they are. It's not just talking about it, but it's really private-public partnerships at work. The private sector is actively and visibly supportive of government efforts, especially in the rollout of vaccines. We saw the commencement of the second phase last week, Monday, on the 17th of May. Players in the private sector through Business for South Africa have really rallied around government, and we're seeing a lot of vaccination sites being rolled out, not just by government, by the private sector. In the Gauteng province, for example, within a week, we've seen vaccination sites being more than doubled from 28 to 63 sites within just 1 week. And that is a trend that is playing itself in other provinces across the country. Some further good news on the vaccine side is the Pfizer vaccine now can be stored for up to 31 days in a normal bar fridge. That's an increase from 5 days. And this should augur well for the rollout of the vaccination program in South Africa, because to allow the government to be able to source larger quantities without being worried that they cannot store them for a reasonably long period of time. Initially, it was 5 days. Now they can store them for 31 days. That really that allows the supply chain to have some buffers. The area of challenge in terms of the vaccine is the delay in the rollout of the J&J vaccine, which we as Aspen Pharmacare were manufacturing at our Quebec factory. But there are issues with the Food and Drug Administration in the USA, which J&J and the authorities have to sort there. And the sooner they sort out those issues, the better. We still have to see how the rollout program will work out when it comes to far-flung rural areas. It's much easier in the metropolitan areas, but there are challenges in rural areas that are logistically very difficult to reach. That's going to be the test that we're going to see. And at a much more global level, it's been encouraging to see the USA supporting South Africa and India's call for Western countries and companies to waive their patent rights to vaccines during the pandemic to enable emerging markets like South Africa and other countries elsewhere in the emerging market space to be able to manufacture vaccines. And I think that's an area as a chamber, and indeed also with the benefit of the good relationships we have with the UK authorities, and see where we can look at how we can get help from our friends in Downing Street and Westminster in terms of also supporting South Africa and other emerging markets in that regard. So I'll just pause and stop there for now. But I am as bullish as Andrew is.
Well, for all of us, I think, David, that's a lovely idea. Let's thank our speakers for giving us a feeling of upliftment at this point of time on middle of the week where we're coming to month end. And the thing that I note, because of my day job, is the value of the South African rand coming below 14 and down to levels that we were pre-COVID. And the struggles we all have to try and understand why the rand is where it is. So that's a very positive one. But I just wanted to ask, and I don't know which of the speakers would like to come back on this or whether there's somebody more proficient within the group to discuss it. But one of the things that we need, and I know it's related to the vaccination program globally, is what are the plans to open the airwaves up to South Africa? When do we think South Africa might not be red listed? And therefore, how soon do we reckon the tourism industry is likely to start to pick up? Kuseni, I don't know if you have some insights on that, having talked about tourism.
Yeah. My view on that is an area of challenge and opportunity for South Africa to communicate that much clearer and that much better in terms of the success of the rollout plan, and also just to share with the world the severity or lack of the so-called South African variant, which has resulted in South Africa being almost like a pariah state and being blacklisted in many other countries. Whereas when you look at the numbers on the ground, the things are not as bad as the world thinks that they are. And I think that's partly a result of maybe the efficacy of our communication. So I think to the extent that the vaccine program, where the government has done an excellent job, where we stand now is that they've managed to contract for sufficient supplies of vaccines that if they are delivered and rolled out efficiently, we can be able to reach herd immunity quicker. And the sooner we reach herd immunity, therefore, I think there will be a strong case to be made for the airwaves to be opened, as it were, so that tourists can come in and South Africans can also travel elsewhere. But I think it's the duty of everyone in this conversation that we're having today to be able to spread the accurate message in terms of the reality of the situation rather than the perception. The perception sometimes tends to be more negative than the reality.
Thank you, Kuseni. Does anybody want to add to that one?
Sharon, maybe let's come back on the
just
vaccine point. I mean, the key thing is this is hitting what's called phase 2A and 2B of the vaccine program, which is basically vulnerable groups. That's around 18 million people over 60s and then vulnerable comorbidities above 40. And the current sort of target the government has is to hit around 150,000 vaccinations per day, which is very, very challenging, but actually probably not necessary. You probably have to hit a rate of about 88,000 per day to cover those people before the fourth wave in December. And I think that's what a lot of foreign countries are watching as the pace of rollout, hitting those vulnerable groups. And that's obviously key to hit those sort of groups to before a fourth wave, before December. We think they can maybe hit that by December, but there are challenges. I mean, currently basically no vaccinations are happening at weekends. Doing that would rapidly increase the overall pace. So some changes and adaptation is needed to ensure there can be a proper summer season for tourism this year.
Thanks, Peter. That actually was quite insightful. Very, very useful.
A question really for any or all of the speakers. For a year plus, the main focus that has been given to what is impeding economic progress is corruption. And I just wonder how much of the sense of optimism that is imbued in the contributions that have been made reflects some progress on that front. And if not, how do panelists feel that the war against corruption is going, and what steps can be taken to accelerate it?
Maybe I can just pick up quickly and then pass to others. So, as you may know, the president's about to give his second bit of evidence to the Zondo Commission, which has been an exhaustive and very open process. And even though it's not led to prosecution, I think the public has become increasingly aware of the depth and scale of the corruption and the names and who has been involved. So that will close now with the president's effort, and the report will come out in July. I'm part of a campaign called Defend Our Democracy, and we've had an amazing response from the public. It's an orange overall campaign, and on Fridays we go to bridges and put up banners to say defend our democracy. And it's an amazing public response, everyone passing by hoots in support. I think that's where the center of South Africa is often misunderstood. It's a conservative society. It's why the EFF in a way have peaked. So I'm pretty hopeful that our judiciary, even though it's slow, will start making the prosecutions. And I think already people are getting some confidence that we gave an orange uniform made for Zuma to the Minister of Justice, and he accepted it, and without any reaction. We've had good publicity in this campaign, and business is now getting behind funding some of it.
If I may just come in as well, I think we've had a lot being said and being revealed at the Zondo Commission. A lot of it is very entertaining, but the question that is frustrating many people is that we are not seeing the consequences. We're not seeing people being brought to book. And I think one of the takeaways from the Zondo Commission has to be about how do we rebuild the institutions, especially the institutions of law and order and the judiciary at large, which were decimated over the past few years. I think as much as we have to focus on giving orange overalls, as Nick says, but we also need to focus on rebuilding institutions, because I think it's really institutions that are efficient and that are trustworthy and that can unleash the right consequences that can assist in dealing with the scourge of corruption, Nick.
Okay, guys, thank you very much.